This is the Spirit and Wellness Show. News and information from a higher perspective. With your host, Harry Wilkinson.
Yes, this is your host, Harry Wilkinson, and welcome once again to the Spirit and Wellness Show. This is the show where we take a look at the days and weeks events, happenings in the world, happenings in politics, happenings in health and technology and education, and in entertainment. We look at everything that we interact with on a daily basis, and we take a look at it from a higher perspective, from a spiritual perspective, if you will. We take a step back, and we look at what we're creating. And we look at it from the point of view that, yes, we are creating all of this on several levels. Of course, on the human level, but beyond that, at a level that, you could refer to as metaphysical, the idea that we create these situations, these stories in which we engage, and they are in a way like the holodeck on Star Trek The Next Generation. They are very realistic situations and stories that you can interact with, change things, but they are ultimately reflections and not the truth of who and what we really are. And that's what's so easy to forget. And that's why I remind myself by doing things like this show, so that I can understand that rather than letting the outside world seem like it is pushing my buttons, which I was struggling with. If you listened last week, I was struggling quite a bit with that. I begin to understand that it's exactly the opposite. That I'm creating these things to work through and gain a greater understanding of the truth of ourselves, our connectedness, our participation in, for want of a better term, divine mind. So that's what this show is about. It's, I think, a healthful way to deal with what can be very toxic information coming across through news channels, through, entertainment even. We can take what may appear to be toxic and we can transmute it into something that is much more powerful and much healthier. And I think it's important to be able to do that. Last week I spoke quite a bit about the happenings in Ferguson, Missouri, and talked about how that situation is calling for a release of fear on everybody's part, and an opening up, however cautious it may be, to a recognition of each other as one, to a recognition of understanding, trust, and connectedness. To know that if you try to attack someone, hurt someone, who and what you're attacking is you, because we are all one. Well, I won't say that mindset has become prominent in Ferguson, Missouri, but it certainly has begun a tenuous truce, if you will. There seems to be an opening up. Things are calming down there, which is gratifying to see. I feel like the prayers and thoughts and energy that I myself and many other people, and perhaps those of you listening to the show, were sending to the people of Ferguson made a difference. I believe it did. Of course, I can't prove it. There is scientific evidence and research to suggest that the power of intention, the energy that we direct outward to something, does affect it. And we'll talk about those shows, that research on other shows. I've talked about it before, but all I can say is that I believe that it helped. And I believe the awareness that the focus of this situation got helped too. Even though for a while it seemed like it was inflaming the situation, which is unfortunately the double-edged sword of this sort of thing. But as I said, I think intention sent by so many people really helped. So on today's show now, we're going to talk about, we're going to continue our discussion about life after life. Does it really exist? What's the scientific evidence for it? And what's the science behind it? And we're going to continue to look at, in particular, one woman's research on this in this area, Maureen Vencelar, PhD. We talked about her a little bit at the end of the show last week. She has a 5-phase theory on what we call NDE, near-death experiences, why they happen, how they happen, and the order in which the things happen. So we'll talk more about that, because I know we just started and I didn't get a chance to continue it, and there were some requests for more information. So we're gonna do that. We're gonna talk about the tree pose in yoga, how to do it, what its benefits for you are, and we're also going to talk about some new breakthroughs in science and brain stimulation that will help us to overcome things like strokes and cognitive impairments and even depression. So we're going to talk about all of that, but we're also going to talk about the effects of violence and attack. I think it's important to talk about that. I've talked about it a little bit in relationship to Ferguson, but I think it bears further evidence in what's going on politically, particularly as involves the recent beheading of an American journalist by the name of James Foley in Syria by a terrorist organization known as the Islamic State. So, they did this in reaction to the bombing this week and the week before in Iraq by American U.S. forces, who decided that the only way to turn back the crisis there, and the crisis, by the way, is this group Islamic State gaining military ground. They are persecuting a minor religious sect that lives in the mountains that they believe are evil. Their style of worship, what they choose to worship, is akin in their worldview, in their spiritual view. They are akin to devil worshippers. So they want to wipe these people out. And so our government decided that the action that needed to be taken was airstrikes. And so in retaliation for those airstrikes, the Islamic State decided to behead this journalist they had captured. And it's very sad that we still worship this belief that somehow you can bomb, attack, behead, and otherwise just violently get yourself out of a situation, or bring peace. Why the silliness of that doesn't come through. Peace through attack. Justice through murder. It's insane, isn't it? And yet this is what our foreign policy is based on. This is what organizations, terrorist organizations, government organizations, this is what people have come to believe. And that is the illusion. That's the falsehood. That's the false belief that continues to reassert itself, and is the reason why we create these situations, so that we can explore and finally, within each of them, understand the truth. That there is no peace through violence. There is no justice through attack. That any so-called attack is just an attack upon yourself. And you really can't attack yourself. You can hurt physical manifestations of things, but who and what we are is not assailable. So those are things to keep in mind. But also, on a, lower level of thinking, when we attack, we always set ourselves up for unexpected consequences. I believe the Dalai Lama said that, and this is not a direct quote. It's more of a generalized summing up of what he said, but basically that the effects of violence aren't knowable. When you think you are, targeting something or attacking something for one reason, what the response will be and how it will play itself out is never known. That's something to keep in mind. An attack and violence don't start in the physical form of blowing something up or shooting someone or grabbing someone by the throat. They start, of course, as a state of mind. And that state of mind is the state of mind that believes in separation, that believes that one side of a situation is better, greater, smarter, more right than another. That one group of people is evil or horrible, and that another group of people are the good guys. All of that kind of state of mind ultimately manifests itself in violence and the belief in, salvation through attack and so forth and so on. And interestingly enough, I'm going to connect this to something and segue into something that may not seem to jibe at first, but I want to talk about the state of talk radio. Because here I am doing this podcast, and there's many, many other people who do podcasts of all sizes and shapes. And what we are also seeing is the death of traditional talk radio. And by traditional talk radio, I'm talking about, radio stations, AM radio stations in major cities, and what we call syndicated programming, which is things like Rush Limbaugh, who does his show from a studio. I think he does it from his home studio now. But that show goes out to radio stations across the nation. That was the standard model for many, many years. AM talk radio survived on advertising support. So, again, a show like Rush Limbaugh's would go out to these different stations, and there would be national advertisers. In other words, advertisers that supported Rush Limbaugh's show. And then for each individual radio station that carried his show, they would also have certain ad time available that they could sell to local merchants and what have you. And that's how the whole thing worked. Well, because of technology and because of things like podcasts, but also because of satellite radio, a big bite has been taken out of that traditional model. It's basically disrupted the model, as new technologies tend to do. And so many what we're seeing are these talk shows that used to be big ratings. And it began with, I really do believe it began with Rush Limbaugh in the early 90s, and we'll get to the history there in a little bit. But what's happening is these shows are either starting to fold, or they're being pushed to different time slots or pushed to different stations at the end of the dial, because less and less advertisers want to get involved with them. And many people blame it on the technologies and the satellite TV, satellite radio and podcasts and all of that. But what I see, what I believe it is, and I think that there are folks that would bear me out on this. Talk radio since the early 90s, with the rise of Rush Limbaugh, has been a battleground. It's been all about who can say the most outrageous things, who can demand that their point of view is the most righteous point of view, and everybody else is a bleeping moron. How much controversy can you gin up? How angry can you make people? That's the approach that talk radio has had to take, because that's the belief system, is that's what people want to hear. That's what gets people to listen. Well, there's truth to that. There's truth to that approach. If you go outside and start sledgehammering, like trees and rocks or whatever, or God forbid live things outside, you're going to get attention. People are going to be watching you. You're going to get people's attention. Not in a good way, but you will get people's attention. If you scream at the top of your lungs while standing on top of a soapbox, people will pay attention to you for a little while. But guess what? They're going to get tired. And not only tired, you may offend some. Now, the offensive strategy, if you will, of talk radio has worked for a while because it gets people excited. But what's begun to happen is that as you offend people, people take action. And there have been boycotts of Rush's show and other shows that have led advertisers to understand that getting involved with this mud pit wrestling that talk radio had become was not helpful to them. It could leave them with, a negative reactions from certain parts of the audience. And if you're trying to sell something, you want to sell to everybody. You don't care what their politics are, and you don't want to insult people that might be customers. And so slowly but surely, and it's amazing to me that it's taken this long for people to catch hold of this, advertisers are starting to understand that talk radio is maybe not the place they want to be if they want to reach out and reach their products to everybody. What happened was in the 90s, as I said, Rush Limbaugh, as a conservative talk show host with a very aggressive style, began to be very popular. People began to listen to it, and it was because at that time we had President Clinton in the White House and a Democratic majority in Congress, and there were a lot of conservative folks that felt out of the loop, that felt frustrated. And Rush Limbaugh gave a voice to that frustration, that level of frustration. And that continued to grow. I mean, he got to be very popular, and conservative talk radio began to really burgeon at that point. So you had more and more of these talk show hosts coming in. As times changed, and George W. Bush became president, and we had 9/11, these talkers continued on. But now, because we have a conservative in the White House, liberals are feeling out of the loop. Liberals are feeling unempowered, and that their voice is not being heard on radio. So we have the rise of liberal talk radio, a voice to counter the onslaught of conservative talk radio. So in the early part of 2000s, you had a company called Air America, in which shows from people like, the now senator, and his name escapes me. I'm sorry about that, but Air America was a company that was supposed to have talk radio shows from the liberal side, and so you had a number of talk show hosts that have gone on to become hosts over at MSNBC. Rachel Maddow and who else? Again, names are escaping me this morning. I apologize, but that was an experiment in trying to counter conservative attacks with liberal attacks. And so talk radio became Attack City, Attack Central. And it still is. But what's happened is that a lot of these shows have gone out of business on both sides. Rush Limbaugh has seen a huge drop in his ratings and has been moved to down the dial, as they say, to stations that aren't listened to frequently, and they're being replaced by things like sports radio and financial information and all of those things that are less risky, things that are less controversial. And liberal radio has also had a series of huge blows. I mean, Air America, which we were just talking about, imploded and went out of business. Randy Rhoads has since retired. She was a very popular liberal talk show host. And others have decided to hang up their radio gear and move on. And there's a few left, people like Tom Hartman, who continue to talk, and the point I guess I'm making is that these shows that thrived on attack, hurt themselves, attacked themselves, and so it's quite understandable that people would get tired of that approach, we are divided on a lot of issues, and we see that playing out in our politics. But a lot of talk radio producers and show hosts made a lot of money off of that. And now it's starting to reverse itself, as it has to. And but we're left with some really good talk show hosts, like, as I mentioned, Tom Hartman, who has a very reasoned, he has a point of view, but a very reasoned point of view. He's not a screaming Mimi. He's always entertaining other points of view besides his own, arguing his point of view, but not in a way that is abusive. And I think that may be the trend if talk radio continues in the traditional manner. That will be the kind of programming that will bring listeners back and bring advertisers back. So enough said about that. Now, I want to talk about the tree pose, which is a great yoga pose that helps you strengthen leg muscles, ankles, and feet, and stabilize your core and give you a sense of balance. So it's very easy. You start in Tadasana, or standing position. Your legs are shoulder-width apart. Your arms are at your side. Now you shift your weight to your left foot and bend your right knee, and you bring your right foot off the floor. Now you bring that right foot up and you place the sole of it against the inner thigh of your left leg. And you can, do that. You move it up as close to the groin area as you possibly can, with your hand. And then you bring your hands together in front of you and you balance. And you stay there for a good minute or two, or as long as you can. And when you're ready, you exhale, bring that foot to the floor, and repeat it with the opposite foot. And it's a great way, as I said, to stabilize your hips and spine, to open up your chest muscles, but also just to give you a sense of balance and orientation in the world. It's a wonderful, wonderful pose. That's the tree pose. Great yoga pose. All right, let's move on now to brain stimulation. We have had a breakthrough here in what they call transcranial direct current stimulation, TDCS. And basically what it is are small electrical currents passing directly onto the scalp, which stimulate nerve cells in the brain, which we call neurons. And these neurons help people focus better, improve attention, also can be helpful in getting past cognitive impairments, and also can relieve depression. Now, Dr. Hannah Maslin is a doctor at the University of Oxford. Oh, I'm sorry, Dr. Roy Kadash is the University of Oxford doctor. And he is the main scientist behind this work. But others are saying they want to regulate this because people need to know how to use this. Using it in too much or in bad ways can cause brain damage, which seems like a reasonable thought. And I think as we go on, we'll call for regulation, because apparently these devices are starting to be sold commercially, and there needs to be a check on them. So be careful if you come across one of these devices that promises this kind of electro TDCS stimulation. They could be dangerous. So just check it through. Talk to your doctor, even if before you go ahead and buy something like this. But it's a really encouraging breakthrough in science. So now let's continue our talk about near-death experiences. And as I explained, Dr. Venselar has done research on the phases of people who have had near-death experiences. And here's the list of characteristics that she has found. Vibrations and small explosions occurring deep in the physical body before the out-of-body experience starts. Then there is an experience of a ghostly body of energy or light that seems to be a copy of the physical body, but with no change in personality. And there's the seeing of the moon, the stars, the Milky Way, and other heavenly bodies during distant out-of-body travels. There's a sensation of becoming as small as a grain of sand, or vice versa, a feeling of expansion when re-entering the physical body. Indications of traveling faster than the speed of light, feeling the strong attraction of a huge magnet-like force, seeing two tornado shapes of energy appearing as an immense hourglass, seeing a blue-green beam of light or a red-pink beam of light, or both, each representing an outcome the person can sometimes choose between. The crucial role of the NDE person's thoughts and the likelihood of forgetting whatever higher wisdom may have been experienced. These are common to all of the people that she has researched. And as we talked about last time, there's two theories. One is that all that's going on is basically a neurological phenomena, and the second explanation is that what's going on is a supernatural phenomena. And what this doctor is trying to do is to look at this from a way that kind of incorporates both of those ideas. And the 5 phases that she sees, and this is her work and her point of view. First phase is a separation from the body. Second phase is a journey through a tunnel of a heavenly light. Third phase is being in the presence of the light near a border. The fourth phase is the return through a tunnel to the physical body. And then the fifth phase is unification, or reunification with the physical body. So we're going to take these phases. We're going to run out of time, so I won't get to all of them, but we'll get to more next week. Phase 1, the separation. And when people are severely traumatized, due to an accident or something, they lose their normal consciousness. They also hear strange noises, feel vibrations, and small explosions deep in their physical body. Almost instantly, NDE people experience another kind of consciousness and a body, often seeing their own physical bodies while, for example, standing next to it. This is the out-of-body experience. And NDE people realize they have a ghostly body of energy which seems to be copying their physical body, but they don't notice any change in their personality. Sometimes they see other beings of light, guides to heaven. They don't feel the pain of their physical body anymore, but feel happy and peaceful. They can hear and see in a different way, but they cannot communicate. So how she explains this through scientific and theoretical ground is she refers to research from biologist Alexander Gurwitch and Nobel Prize winner and biophysicist Fritz Albert Popp that talk about unstable atoms in our physical body which release exotic light energy in the form of photons. So as a traumatized body begins to sense dying, as the cells begin to die, it gives off these lights, photons of energy, which then are basically the physical body throwing out its own light. Dying cells release countless of these photons. So the release of light energy from a traumatized body could also be indirectly affirmed by the scientific research of Dr. Ellis Chawla and near-death researcher P.M.H. Atwater. And they have basically established that in or near the physical body of traumatized or dying people, the electromagnetic values related to light change. So there is actually energy coming out of the body. And so that is the first phase. And we've run out of time, so I'm going to have to return to that next week. But do come back. We'll talk about the next 4 phases in our journey beyond the physical body. Until then, have a wonderful week.